A simple chair. Soft, balanced lighting picks out only the face of the speaker. In the background there are faint university noises. Footsteps on tile, a distant laugh. All muted under a blanket of hush. The character sits upright, eyes fixed directly on the camera or the listener. When you step onto a university campus for the first time, you carry a satchel of new dreams. You can almost smell the potential. The crisp scent of textbooks and fresh notebooks, the faint tang of ink and printer toner, the warm aroma of coffee from the campus cafe that seems to promise long nights of study without judgment. There is the steady rhythm of lectures, the echo of footsteps across corridors, and the bright conviction that knowledge is transformative, that education is not merely a passage of time but a reconfiguration of the self. I carried those same dreams. I believed, as many of us do, that within those walls there would be nothing but learning and honest work. That the hierarchy was harmless, just structure. That the rules existed to ensure fairness rather than shield favoritism. I learned, sooner than I expected, that institutions are not only repositories of knowledge. They are sometimes arenas of power, influence, and hierarchy, where the truth is buried beneath procedure, reputation, and convenience. My name is Adrian Clarke. The Adrian who once topped his exams, the one whose professors complimented his meticulous notes and whose peers quietly admitted to learning more from his careful method than from lectures themselves. I was the student who spent long nights in the lab, calibrating equipment that refused to cooperate, who rewrote experimental protocols when a minor error could throw off an entire month of results. Natalie Foster was my classmate, my collaborator, my companion in projects and late-night troubleshooting. She was quiet in her brilliance, methodical in her diligence, and driven by a sense of integrity that demanded no applause but silently commanded respect. Together we mapped out plans for the future, projects that sketched a bright trajectory for both of us. We dreamed in the small details of code lines, the precise calibration of instruments, the rhythmic tapping of keyboards late into the night. We believed that effort and honesty would always carry weight. Then, one morning, everything broke. A single post on social media obliterated the scaffolding of what we had been building. It was simple, blunt, and devastating. Natalie Foster stole the project. The post carried no evidence, no justification, no acknowledgement of nuance. Just accusation. The accompanying photos were doctored, captions slanted, a short video cleverly edited. It spread like wildfire, moving through student groups, private chats, and public forums, each share amplifying the storm. Within hours, the university administration acted. Suspension, promises of investigation, public statements implying guilt even before a hearing had taken place. The man behind the accusation, Zachary Holt, was the smiling, self-assured student everyone knew. Charismatic, well-connected, careful in his networking, the kind of person who could navigate corridors of power with ease. He had influence that moved quietly but persistently, like an invisible current beneath the placid surface of the university. At first, I listened, consumed by the small, private rage that builds in the chest when you witness injustice. Rage is a strange thing, warm, sharp, but inherently useless unless paired with strategy. I tried the obvious channels first: faculty offices, administrative departments, the records office. Each door I knocked on seemed designed to absorb accountability. Transparency existed only in theory. CCTV footage was conveniently missing. Email logs had gaps. Physical files seemed to vanish into air. It was as if someone had anticipated the challenge and arranged the world so that no trace of truth could be easily found. I remember Natalie's eyes that day, wide, hollowed by fear, yet still searching for someone to believe her. Her hands, which had never trembled in the lab, now shook with a mix of terror and indignation. I saw the crushing weight of false accusation, the way it bends even the most composed person under its pressure. And in that moment, I decided I could not accept silence. I chose a path of retribution, though not one of spectacle or violence. Instead, I chose a methodical, painstaking approach. Gather the facts, expose the pattern, and let evidence speak louder than the whispers of gossip or the force of personality. I began studying Zachary not as a person but as a system, as a set of behaviors and recurring patterns. Where did his research come from? Whose names adorned his acknowledgments? Who signed off on deadlines and how? I traced project timelines, analyzed emails, cross-checked lab notes, and examined every submission and timestamp I could access. Every small discrepancy, every minor irregularity became a clue. Often, the most telling evidence is subtle. A file mislabeled, a commit timestamp that seems inconsequential, a transfer of credit that left no formal trace. These small anomalies piled up, slowly revealing a coherent narrative. The work was unglamorous. It demanded patience, attention to detail, and a willingness to live in tedium for months. I learned to decode bureaucracy, the correct way to request records, the right phrasing for complaints that could not be ignored, the paths that avoided the blind spots of administrative apathy. And in this slow pursuit of clarity, I found allies in unexpected places. A librarian remembered a book return that disproved an alibi. A lab technician noted a login timestamp that contradicted Zachary's account. A quiet postgraduate had saved an old email thread that others had dismissed as irrelevant. Each piece mattered. Each small observation built a bridge over the canyon of lies. Step by step, the story emerged. Zachary's pattern was clear. He relied on charm, on cultivated relationships, and on an ability to perform confidence over competence. He took credit for others' work, learned to present arguments with polished certainty, and counted on authority to mask absence of original contribution. Institutions, I realized, often reward performance over substance. With that understanding, my approach shifted. I did not confront him with theatrics or rage. I documented meticulously. I organized relentlessly. I prepared exhaustively. The evidence compiled: email chains, lab logs, version histories, raw datasets, drafts marked with Natalie's initials, timestamps that predated Zachary's claims. Missing files were located in backups. When CCTV footage from one office disappeared, recordings from adjacent cameras provided verification. I assembled it all into a narrative comprehensible even to those outside our specialized field. It was a story told by documents and records, by traces and timestamps, rather than rhetoric or passion. The story itself demanded attention. Then I requested a meeting. No press conference, no public spectacle. Just a simple session where facts could be presented, examined, and challenged. My goal was not to humiliate but to make accountability inescapable. I ensured every piece of evidence had duplicates, every claim could be verified, every question anticipated. The first reactions were predictable: discomfort, nervous laughter, and defensive deflection. Supporters of Zachary suggested personal motives, tried to cast suspicion on me, questioned my integrity. Yet as I walked the room through the evidence step by step, the atmosphere shifted. A table of timestamps, an email thread preserved in original form, a software commit history. These things could not be dismissed. The room grew silent. Skepticism became attentiveness. Administration could no longer ignore clear documentation. The machinery of the university, which had once shielded Zachary behind politeness and procedure, now had to respond. An official inquiry was launched. Committees that had seemed indifferent now delved into investigation. Interviews, verification of digital footprints, cross-examination of lab members. I spent countless hours in testimony. My goal was never retribution. I wanted the facts to emerge, unaltered and undeniable. There were costs. Anyone who challenges a system, even with evidence, risks social consequence. I lost casual friendships. I was accused of sabotage, of narcissism, of obsession. Nights were long. Doubt crept in. Was the personal strain worth it? Yet every glance at Natalie, every memory of her dignity under humiliation, reinforced my commitment. I had to proceed. Eventually, the truth emerged in a quiet, bureaucratic triumph. The record verified that Natalie was the original contributor to the work. Logs aligned. Timestamps confirmed authorship. Zachary, who had skillfully navigated social networks to appropriate credit, had relied on gaps in oversight, friendly nods, and selective memory. The university reinstated Natalie. Suspensions lifted, formal apologies issued, records corrected. Recognition mattered less than dignity restored. Her name, her work, her integrity, all reclaimed. The resolution was imperfect. Some reputations remained tarnished, factions whispered in corridors, and Zachary continued his career, constrained but not erased. Yet the narrative had shifted. The university had to account for its process, and truth had reasserted itself against rumor. I learned lessons I will carry for life. Power is often invisible. It wears ordinary faces, exercises influence through policies and selective enforcement, and thrives in the habit of unquestioning trust. Truth is stubbornly mundane. It does not dazzle, it accumulates. It is built through consistent documentation and meticulous observation. Courage need not be flamboyant. It can be quiet persistence, an insistence on letting evidence speak. Justice is not always revenge. True justice can be the restoration of what has been wronged, a retrieval of dignity and recognition rather than a spectacle of destruction. There are easier ways to live. One could ignore the post, sigh, and continue walking through the campus corridors. Silence is comfortable, yet silence is not neutral. It becomes complicity. When the ethical cost of silence is too high, action, no matter how painstaking, becomes necessary. The work, once broken down into tasks, documentation, requests, cross-checking, verification, becomes manageable. Allies emerge. Truth accumulates in paper trails, emails, logs, and diligent recollections. Lies cannot withstand the methodical aggregation of facts. I remember a hallway outside a packed meeting room. A professor approached me quietly. "You were very patient," he said. Felt understated but profound. Patience because building the case took months. Patience because it required resisting dramatic gestures. Patience because truth often requires endurance, not fury. Patience because only a slow accumulation of evidence can dismantle a carefully constructed lie. Natalie returned to her work. Experiments resumed, thesis completed, conferences attended. She bore the ordeal with grace. Those who had rushed to judgment confronted their error. Reinstatement was a small corrective in a culture dominated by noise, but it was pivotal. Integrity could be defended. Quiet, methodical perseverance had restored balance. Real life rarely fits neat archetypes. Villain, victim, hero, convenient but misleading. The hero here was not a single person but a process. The slow, collective work of truth emerging against apathy and obfuscation. Librarians, lab assistants, graduate students, each played a role in restoring justice. Justice is, in essence, collective. Courage is, in essence, persistence. The path was arduous. But when the method is disciplined, when the aim is just, difficulty does not diminish value. Nights spent awake thinking of other students crushed by falsehoods motivated me. The grind was necessary, not merely personal. The work itself, assembling evidence, holding the line, pursuing verification, became its own measure of resolve. This is my story. A university, a lie, and a voice that refused to be silenced. There is no moralistic flourish. Victory is incremental, bureaucratic, precise. Change often occurs not with drama, but with the patient rethreading of truth into a frayed fabric of convenience and power. He offers a faint smile, letting the weight of the story linger. Silence can be a weapon if allied to truth. When silence lets falsehood thrive, it is betrayal. When silence provides space for evidence to accumulate, it becomes a force louder than rumor. It is a quiet arena where truth asserts itself, persistent and patient. When facing a choice to shout or to gather proof, know this: righteous noise may feel satisfying, but it is the meticulous assembly of evidence that dismantles entrenched falsehoods. That is the work I chose. That is the work that restored a friend's name. If there is one instruction I would pass along, do the slow work well. Collect records, trace trails, preserve integrity. Endurance becomes its own reward. He pauses. Silence settles like punctuation. You just heard a story of betrayal, survival, and quiet revenge. If it left you thinking, hit like, share it forward, and subscribe for more true emotional stories that'll stay with you long after they end. Every click helps another story find its voice.